In Annie's report, for many Canadians, July the 1st is also an opportunity to reflect on the path to reconciliation and the work that needs to be done to recognize Indigenous rights and contributions. That in mind, we're joined now by Percy Lazard, Assistant Professor and Program Coordinator of the Indigenous Studies Program at Wilfrid Laurier University in Waterloo. Percy, thanks so much for being with us.
Good afternoon.
Now, when you reflect on, the unmarked graves that have been discovered, what does this day represent to you, Percy?
First off, why is feasting teaching on me? Why am I keeping the dish with one spoon here on one day? And the Schnabehood and the Shoni Three Fire Confederacy. I want to give thanks to the people's land who I get to have this critical and necessary conversation. And I think it's an opportunity for non-Indigenous, meaning non-First Nations, Métis, Inuit, Afro Indigenous, Black Indigenous people to be in conversation on the ways in which this country has come to be and how it continues to displace, disappear, and continue to cause harm to First Nations, Métis, Inuit, Afro Indigenous, Black Indigenous folks. So this is what the day reminds. It's not a place of a site for celebration, but an opportunity for reflection. And I know cancel culture is weaponized, and it steps away from an accountability process and how folks continue to benefit from the displacement of First Nations, Métis, Inuit, Afro Indigenous, Black Indigenous people through the 126-year phenomenon of the residential school, through the sterilization of folks, and through the removal of children into the child welfare system. So those are many of the things based on policies that have been acted and continue to be enacted on First Nations, Métis, Inuit, Afro Indigenous, Black Indigenous folks.
Pardon me, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to ask you, those difficult conversations that you were mentioning that must continue to be had, and the education. Do you see any evidence of that taking root in the community? Do you see any evidence of, the past couple of years, the heightened focus and perhaps increased conversations at the community level making a difference in any way?
I think there's an investment for folks to want to be good relatives. I see that, but I also see folks investing in weaponizing against necessary conversations. And I get that people are fatigued. Try living as an Indigenous person under these conditions every day. And I think what I task and what I ask as someone who educates and as a researcher and a clinician is for folks to have those necessary conversations. If you don't know what you don't know. But since the Royal Commission of Aboriginal People in the 90s, the 2015 94 calls to action, the 2021 national inquiry have been there. So there's a for us by us on what would improve the quality of life of all First Nations, Métis, Inuit, Afro Indigenous, Black Indigenous people. Nationally, there are things. So educate yourself, be critical, have conversations with other folks, and not position Indigenous folks as always being the ones that are problematic. Start questioning, why are things happening the way they are? Why is the continued resource extraction that impacts the quality of life of First Nations folks on reserve through multinationals and whatnot? Ask questions, and ask questions with other non-Indigenous folks. Be in conversation about how folks continue to benefit from the displacement of Indigenous folks here, especially on a day like today.
Percy Lazard, Assistant Professor and Program Coordinator of the Indigenous Studies Program at Laurier, at Wilfrid Laurier University. We appreciate your perspective today. Thanks so much for joining us.
White Lim Lim.
Well, for the Indigenous community, the pain and trauma of residential schools, of course, is intergenerational. For survivors and families, there is a crisis line, and it is available 24 hours a day. That number is 1-866-925-4419.